invite the chancellors if they have a question or a comment for the commission to make it at this time.
Thank you. This is Kathy Sandeen. I'm the Chancellor of University of Alaska Anchorage, and Dr. Ramaswamy and Dr. Powell, thank you for your time. My question goes specifically to our policies that outline the delineation of responsibilities and authority between the president of the system and the chancellors. Now, as both of you know, and most people in this room know, I have experience in 2 other public systems, one as a chancellor. In addition, the year I was an American Council on Education fellow, I spent that year studying the California State University system. So that's 3 public university systems. And our policy seems to have worked okay in the past and didn't raise any red flags until now. But when I go back and I look at those policies, so Chapter 0201, it's Regents Policy Part 2, Chapter 0201, University President, where it outlines the authority of the president. It appears that the responsibilities and authority of the president of the system, they just transferred from when we only had 1 university and 1 president of 1 university. And when I look at, again, Part 2, Chapter 202, officers of the university and the responsibilities of the chancellors have no authority except for that delegated by the president. And there is no formal document that outlines the delegation. Meanwhile, at NWCCU, as CEOs of accredited institutions, we are supposed to have authority over certain things in our institutions, and technically we do not. So I just ask you if I'm on the right track in terms of focusing on these policies and what we need to do, or what our regents need to do to delineate a little more clearly those lines and giving authority to chancellors for certain functions and operations within the individual accredited universities.
Well, thanks, Chancellor Sandeen. This is Sonny. I'll give you, I'll respond, and then I'll let Max pick up a little bit more. So the bottom line is, for us, that's what we want to know. What are the roles and responsibilities of the chancellors of 3 universities that are accredited, and then how do they relate to the president, and how do they, the chancellors and the president relate to the regents, the board, and vice versa. And so really, our intent in sending the letter was really that, delineate, please, very clearly the roles and responsibilities and who does what and why. And that way we have a clear sense. Everybody has a clear sense of the sort of the line of command, et cetera, that is in place within the system, as well as the individual universities that are accredited. Mac?
No, I think that's very well said. As someone that walked with the teams in Alaska, Anchorage, and in Juneau, we can share with you that the teams asked some of the very same questions, and each of the teams requested specific meetings with the President Johnson just to kind of talk through his understanding of what the roles and responsibilities were. So it's something that I think that teams have been interested in, and I think that the letter really is the sentiment of what we hear as the commission from the public, from students, faculty, staff, from other administrators, which is, as you go through this process, our role here is to support the standards. It's to support that clear, transparent communication so that everyone engaged in the decision-making process really understands whose role, whose authority, and all of this does extend from the board. I mean, it is a complex governance situation because you have 3 independently accredited institutions. You have a single board that's representing each of those institutions. So we understand that there's complexity there and that it is a very unique situation. That's part of the reason why we've encouraged all of you, in all of my communications, to not we're not going to have the right answer. There's not going to be an A to Regent Perdue's question, but really to reach out to AGB, to SHIO, to other models, to look to other systems that are working effectively, and then just to make it transparent and clear so that everyone engaged understands clearly, transparently, who's making decisions, why the decisions are being made, and how the lines of authority roll up to the board.
Chancellor Caulfield.
Thank you, Chancellor Rick Caulfield, University of Alaska Southeast. I don't have any additional questions for representatives from the commission. I do want to express my agreement with my colleague from University of Alaska Anchorage. I think this is a real opportunity for us as a system to revisit those policies that she referenced and to give new consideration to the relationship between the statewide office and the chancellors so that there's clarity for everybody involved. And obviously this is a huge challenge for our system. Everyone has spoken to that, and it's also an opportunity to take the time to work through those and strike the right balance. It's in the interest of the institution as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Chancellor White.
Thank you. This is Dan White, Chancellor at University of Alaska Fairbanks, and I also support my colleagues' comments. I'm an engineer, so I get straight to where the rubber meets the road, and for me, I've heard, well, this is not a tipping point letter or it's a red flags letter. It's a really big deal to get a letter as the CEO of an accredited university saying that there are concerns that you've failed. I mean, that's a big deal, especially for UAF in the position that we're in with our accreditation coming up. And I think, and maybe I read the letter as fairly vague in what specifically the issue was. I think as I talk to people, it's been interpreted as just a lack of communication. There needs to be more communication versus really clarity needed in decision making. And I think this discussion has been helpful. At least what I have heard is it is clarity needed in decision making. I am looking at I interpreted the letter to say that the university's CEOs would report collectively or together, and now through the president or through the chair. But I understand that I'm going to write that letter, and I need, for me, it's important to know what it is that we're trying to respond to. And if it's decision making, I think there's another issue that we will need to address, and that is what is the decision making authority that is needed to meet the standard 1 criteria of the commission. And maybe this is information that's already been shared with Paul. Maybe Paul is planning to share that, but I don't have the information that's been shared with Paul, so I don't know if that is something that Vice President Layer, that we're going to get at some point. But anyway, so for me, the more that can be shared from the commission or from President Ramaswamy or Dr. Powell about the specific concerns and how our response will or will not meet standard 1, which was what the concern was raised in the letter. Thank you.
Thank you.
So if I may, Chair Davies.
Yes, go ahead.
This is Sonny. May I, sir? Yes. I want to thank Chancellor Sandeen, Caulfield, and White on their comments and their questions as well, particularly Chancellor White's, Dan, if I may call you that. Really, at the end of the day, for us, is that clarity as to, what is the line of command and what are your roles and responsibilities at your level, and what are the roles and responsibilities that is vested in the president, and that's the board. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the board that determines who gets to do what, et cetera. And that needs to be delineated very clearly. And that's what, we've heard from various individuals. And that's number 1, is that clarity. Number 2 is the communications piece of it, and I agree that, Regent Anderson spoke to the fact that, a lot of input has been sought. I've heard from a number of individuals. Yes, that's been happening as well. But really the communication piece of it as well, that really incumbent on the board, the chancellors, and the president to be communicating at multiple different levels and back and forth. And so that the process that is being undertaken and the result of that will then be, incorporated into a substantive change proposal that ultimately comes to us to be evaluated. And so those are the two things. I mean, really it comes to that, the clarity and the transparency of it as well, that, that everybody has a chance to read and we've heard from the students that they seem to, the students feel like they're not part of the conversation. And so, what is it, what more can be done at the different levels? And these are things that we've been, thinking of as well. So in the report that you would want to do either collectively or individually, and I encourage you to get together and do it collectively, is to demonstrably show to us what is it you're doing, what are the roles and responsibilities, what's the line of command, the clarity in regards to, does everybody know what their roles and responsibilities are? Is there clarity to it? And that's what we need to get. Mac, do you want to add anything more?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you.